Hello, welcome to Design Time. I'm Jackie Lacey. We're going to continue today talking about the elements and principles of design in our series to prepare people for the upcoming PFDE at the National Symposium in Las Vegas, or for those that are competing in competitions this week at various state associations around the United States or other places that you might be going. One of the things that you want to make sure is that you've studied and prepared yourself for all the elements and principles of designs, because it is one of the things that the evaluators will look at. On the other side, if you're not competing or looking for certification, the reason that you want to stay on top of your elements and principles is because they're the building blocks of the design. They tell us how and why things work together, what is visually appealing, what works when it comes to size, shape, dimension, balance. All of those are very important. Today we'll be talking about pattern. And pattern is one of those things that can make or break almost any design that it's used in. One of the things that people often forget is that pattern is evident in a lot of the things we use naturally, like foliage. All of these instructions can be found in the AIFD Guide to Floral Design on page 101 under the Elements and Principles. Be sure that you study up on the book definition, but then also you want to make sure that you completely understand how to manipulate those and present those. When we talk about foliage, pattern in foliage is natural to some designs, like in this variegated aspidistra leaf. We can see that it's both white and green, and the pattern variates, but it's very evident when we look at this particular design that that is a pattern that is natural and has already been put in there. If we begin to break down this particular design, we can see that the bamboo pieces are all put in a certain way so that it creates repetition. And that's the very core definition of pattern. Things or combinations that are repeated. We've also repeated our treatment of the foliage. We've stripped all of this baker fern or leather leaf up to a certain point, making sure that we're also doing that in an equal balance so that the pattern remains true as well in there. We've wrapped them in a similar fashion around the bamboo so that it creates interest and it balances out the design. But if you start to look closely at this particular design, you'll see that we have strayed away from our pattern that we're adding in there by separating the green roses. If you look at the lavender roses, they're all clustered. Bamboo is all clustered. The liatris is all clustered. The foliage is all clustered. And then we separate that in the roses, the way that we have inserted those. So that would naturally stand out to an evaluator or in a competition that might not necessarily be professional application as is done in everyone else's designs. So you want to make sure that not only do you understand pattern and that you have incorporated and used it in your designs well, but that also that it's consistent. If you do something one way, you want to make sure that you do it that way through the entirety of the design, because that is really the true form of pattern. Pattern can be lined, as we've done here, but we can also see that color can become a pattern within a design. If we look closely, one of the things on the liatris, the way it's been stripped and cleaned very well on everything else, is that we have taken it all the way up. We've removed all of the little pieces of foliage from the top, except for on this one. Now again, to an evaluator, that's going to stand out as not true good form when it comes to pattern, because we've left that foliage there where it's been removed from the other. And because we're manipulating that, we have complete control over that. So make sure that you take that into consideration. When you're using or creating patterns, say with magnolia foliage, as we've done here, you've got that beautiful glossy green side, then you have that velvety brown side that's on the opposite, one of the reasons I love working with magnolia. But if we don't strip it and place it properly, you can see how it stands out. When we've added these cremones into this particular design, we've left the foliage in certain places, we've stripped the stems correctly and balanced properly, but then if you look at the way this has been inserted, where everything else is on a true vertical insertion, this piece cuts across. Does that make sense to your design? Will the evaluator understand why you've done that? So when you begin to use these things for its pattern, again, go back to being consistent. Make sure that if you're going to do it a certain way, that you do it that way within the design, because you can see how easily that pulls it back in. We can see that it's a pattern that not only has it been cleaned and placed properly, but it's also been inserted correctly. Same thing with this, where we've used the cremones as a basing technique. They all follow that certain pattern. When we've added the beautiful gold monstera foliage in there, again, following a certain pattern and making sure that that's consistent throughout the design. When you start to create pattern within a specific form or shape that you might be using for competition or for certification, make sure that if you create multiples, that they too have a similar appearance, that it's all consistent. We've consistently kept these lily grass roses braided and folded, manipulated together in a similar fashion so that it stands out. When you utilize your accessories, like using the aluminum wires for some beautiful round circles like we've done here, we could easily begin to add those in to any design that we might be doing, but we would want to do that in a certain way as to make sense to the final composition. If it does not make sense, it's going to stand out as a mistake, and you're not going to get the true credit that you might be looking for with that particular technique had you made sure that everything was in a consistent fashion. Circles, they're beautiful, can be added right into something as that beautiful accessory. But again, you want to make sure they're consistent. This is a little inconsistent when we go from one size to a little larger size and then back to a smaller. If it fit a pattern, we'd be able to see that clearly, but we do not in this. And then when you're taking color into consideration, one of the reasons I brought the balloon up here is because we can see printed pattern very easily. All of the color is distributed throughout. But as we begin to look at these particular containers and the color becomes the pattern again, one thing that we took into consideration when we were developing them is the floral products we were going to use. We surrounded with a similar color and technique, a little trick that we did that's going to make those really bump up that level of design. Think about pattern each time you begin to use it. Am I using it correctly? Am I using a proper amount? Is it going in the same direction? Has it been stripped correctly? Do I fold things at the same point as I use them? All of these are very important when it comes to utilizing pattern and making sure that your evaluators or those people that might be judging during a competition can easily understand it when they look at it. Remember, don't leave any guesswork on the table, because your evaluators or judges might not be on the same page as you are when you intend to do that. I hope this will help you as you begin to look at certification or you begin to compete this year. Good luck to everyone with the upcoming symposium just around the corner. Be sure and let us know if you have questions when it comes to any of the elements and designs. We'll continue next week off-site as we'll be traveling, and then the following week we'll pick up again with the techniques or with the principles rather than the elements, so that we can hopefully get some of those in before the certification in Las Vegas. Thanks so much for joining us. Check us out on www.floriologyinstitute.com. Join us again next time for Design Time. If you enjoyed that video and you'd like to see more, click the subscribe button.